Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Tommo, and welcome to my post-race Chinwag for the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix. Wow, early doors this morning in the UK, 6 a.m. race start, and it was very chilly in Vegas. Apparently, it's been chilly in the UK last couple of days. Not so much today, actually. And, well, it all ended, didn't it? It was done. It was finished. Max Verstappen wins the 2024 F1 World Championship. This was a long time coming. This was a very, very long time coming. Many did their best to squeeze and hold dearly onto hope, but it was always hope. It was always going to be a long shot for Lando Norris to overcome the behemoth that is Max Verstappen. And he got it done. Welcome everyone. James, Sense, Ricardo, Thomas, Puff Piastri, Sugar Ray, Seamus, Famke, Josh, and the rest of you. Thank you to everyone who's listening on audio only platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. This goes on video version Spotify as well. So check that out, 5 stars, all the good stuff while you're there. And you can support me on Patreon, of course. Links are down in the description below. Soft, medium or hard tier of membership. I'll do a exclusive Patreon only live stream straight after this one. So if you want to have a bit more of a chill conversation about the season, about whatever you want to talk about, then about 10 minutes after I wrap this, I'll be live on Patreon. So yes, we can talk all about it on there as well if you like. Wow. It's done. It's done. He didn't need to win. He only needed to outscore Lando by 2 points, because obviously Lando got fastest lap in the end. But yeah, got it done. And the right man won. Absolutely no question over the course of the season. Max has put... He doesn't make mistakes, really, in terms of even the questionable antics at times. You know, he knows what he's doing. He's playing to his outs. There's a really good interview, actually, with Lawrence Barretto that they put out. I think it's really good. I honestly, on the F1 YouTube channel, go and watch it after this. I don't know how you can watch that interview with Max and not be like, yeah, Max is just like he's a really good bloke. Like I genuinely think, right? And he talks about the journey coming up. It's almost like a bit of a release of emotion now that the title's actually wrapped up, right? Because you never know, anything can happen until it's mathematically done. It's not done, and I mean, yeah, it's been a hell of a year for him. I think it's been arguably his most impressive title. Now, of course, throughout the course of the year, the Red Bull I think had the advantage at the start of the year, then the McLaren, then the Ferrari, Mercedes at times throughout the course of the year. You know, we've had 7 different multiple race winners in one season, which has not happened for a hell of a long time. Both the McLaren boys have won multiple races, as long as you include the sprint. Is that including the sprint? Either way, regardless. Both Ferraris, not both Red Bulls, of course. Yeah, it's one of them that, like, I really do think the Lando is very new to this. Okay, this is his first year winning a race, and I don't know. I just think that he wasn't quite prepared. He wasn't quite ready, and I can't begrudge Lando for that. You know, he's not been at this game as long as Max has. He's not been in a top competitive car for as long as Max has. But I just think that he needs to learn a lot, and he's going up against one of the greatest to ever do it. I think there's no doubt in my mind now that Max is one of the greatest of all time. I put him up in a category with a number of names. I put him up there with, Lewis, with Fernando, with Michael, with Alain, with Ayrton, with Jim Clark, with those names that for me are all kind of in their relative generation. Fangio, of course, as well, are all have good arguments for being the greatest within their respective generation of all time, because you can only ever be within your generation. Oh yeah, and sorry if there's a bit of a sync issue. I don't really know why. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. I think Max has really rubber stamped it. He says in this interview with Lawrence Barretto, he will do anything to win, and I think that to some people won't like that, but to others that is the mark of a great champion. And at the end of the day, he does what it takes to win. He's incredibly adept. He's prepared to delve into the dark arts when needed, and more often than not comes out on top. And he's a thoroughly deserving 4-time world champion, no doubt. I think he's been the best driver for the last 4 seasons, and that includes 2021 as well, by the way. In terms of the best driver on the grid, I think for me, he's been the cut above, And yeah, so 4 in a row, emulating what Seb did. There are, of course, similarities, right? Seb won his first in 2010, very, very competitive season, came down to the last race. So did 21 for Max. Then obviously in 2011, it was pretty comfortable for Seb. Max was pretty comfortable in the end. Obviously, Show had that early competitiveness, but that fell away. Then, of course, 23 was Max's most dominant, and that was a long drawn out championship for Seb. And Fernando almost nicked it at the end, didn't he? In 2012, and then of course 2013 was probably Seb's most dominant of them all. What Max's 2023 was. 2024, this was closer to 2012. But Lando, it was always a long shot. Maybe a few things go differently for Lando. But a lot as well were things that were in McLaren and Lando Norris's control. And Red Bull didn't really... Sure, the car had some issues. But in terms of operationally, the team didn't really make mistakes. The strategy team always seemed to be... I know Max kind of gave him a bit of a hard time in Hungary, but more often than not, the strategy team are firing on all cylinders, right? And are backing up a driver of the quality of Max Verstappen. So, yeah, look, it's 4 in a row. It's thoroughly deserved. Will it be 5 in a row next year? Look, I feel like Max has to go in as favourite for next year. I think even though, Ferrari are looking quick, McLaren are looking quick, Mercedes, if they can actually work out, hang on a second, like we do have a quick car underneath us, we just need to find out how to, and you'd like to think between now and the start of next season, the learnings that they can do should enable them to unlock some performance and give George Russell a chance for a title fight. But for George, for Charles, for Lewis, for Lando, for Oscar, for all these guys in top tier machinery, to beat Max in a Red Bull, especially where they've had this almost reality check. I think from a car point of view, where they were so clear and they were comfortable, and then all of a sudden you've got this big slump in form, and it's almost reinvigorated. And I almost feel more confident about Max going into 25 because of this hindrance, right? Because I'm sure in some way it's woken everyone up at the back of Red Bull Racing to be like, hang on a second, right? Our time dominating this sport from a car point of view is over. It could obviously restart from 26, who knows? But that period's over. Now we've got to maximise everything. We've got to find everything. And, Max put in incredibly impressive performance. I don't think he could have done more this morning at Vegas. And yeah, I think Nestroy, you make a good point. I think it's consistency, right? It's consistency above all else that Max has. Again, his bulletproof reliability, doesn't make mistakes. Nico Hülkenberg said it, after Brazil, everyone was making mistakes apart from Max. And yeah, he's got to go in as favourite. I think the beauty of this formula in its current specification is that you go to any Grand Prix. Vegas is quite a outlier, very, very, very cold. And that played to the strengths of the Mercedes, clearly. But then we go to Qatar, it's going to be, temperature-wise, the polar opposite. And we'll probably see the McLarens come alive again. But I kind of like that. Yeah, sure. Going into every single race weekend, having essentially 4 teams, I'm including Mercedes in this, be competitive enough for a race win is great. It's amazing. Like, that'd be so cool. But also, there's something about, you know, you having a clear of those 4, you having a complete different order of merit of those 4, where the driver can still make a difference, right? I mean, Max, could have. It was always a tough ask to hold on ahead of the Ferraris, because the Ferraris were clearly quicker than the Red Bulls this weekend, and they were very. I mean, their race pace in practice was exceptional. But yeah, I kind of almost find that just as, if not more compelling, the idea that there's a different competitive order each weekend, and we've got that for a lot of this year. And again, those early races, pre-Miami, Red Bull, Max really, maximised what they have. I mean, if they'd won, if Max hadn't broken down in Australia, by the way, as well, I mean, this would have been wrapped up earlier than it already has been. So, yeah, they did pretty much, from Max's point of view, he did everything to maximise when those early races, because, it doesn't matter. Round 1, round 24, the points are still the same. It doesn't matter the Grand Prix. And, I think, honestly, like, I don't think anyone realistically doubts Max's ability. I think, some people don't like the way he races at times, and I think that's a fair critique. But everyone's looking for what they're looking for when it comes from the greats of all time, right? Some people love Schumacher and Senna because of their overly aggressive approach at times. Some people prefer, Prost and Hamilton because of their Prost. And there's always examples, right? There's always examples to the contrary. But I mean, his ability is undoubted, and go and watch that F1 interview with Lawrence Barretto and Max, because honestly, you can't It's funny, isn't it? Because domination typically breeds resentment. It's nothing personal to Max or Lewis or Michael or anyone who's dominated the sport, or Sebastian. But typically, the especially the more casual fan base will generally start to switch off, and you want something new. And I think there was a lot of that's a big part of why I was. I've always liked Lewis. I've always had a lot of respect for Lewis. He's never been my favourite, but that's just because maybe in his early years. But I'm not drawn to success. I find more interest in the stories throughout, right? And that's why I'm an album guy. But Max coming in and finally giving Lewis a real challenge in 2021. That was just. Nothing's beaten. I mean, 25 could be better than 21. Who knows, right? There's, it was almost a boxing match in 21, because you had just two drivers from 2 different teams going head to head, and they were clear of everyone else. So I think 25 is lining up to be so interesting, because obviously these cars are hitting a theoretical ceiling in terms of potential performance, aren't they? I just can't wait. It's going to be so good. But yeah, I think Max has to go in as favourite. There's very little reason why I wouldn't predict in my predictions for 25, predict Max to make this 5 in a row, because he's that good. And I think Charles is the best hope at taking it to him, honestly. But time will tell. Either way, Max is going to enjoy this one. I'm sure he's had a fun time in Vegas, probably still having a fun time. And we go again next year. Still 2 races to go this year, though. So the year's not over yet. And there's a very, very compelling Constructors' Championship fight going on, which I don't think needs to be forced. I'm quite interested to see how that pans out, because you've got 2 groups of 3 teams where it could go either way. What are you doing, Minton? He's trying to get, comfortable in the... He's not moving all the boxes, right? He wants to get in the gown. Right? Do you want to get in the gown, mate? Go on. Right, go on. In you go. He loves a dressing gown, old Minton. You get under and get comfortable. Right, okay. Anyway, race rating time. Can I please get a race rating from you all? In the chat, just give me some numbers, and then I'll use those numbers in the live chat to put a little poll together. And then I'll Oh, race rating out of 10, please. 5, 6, 7, 4. Okay. I'm going to do 5 or lower. 6, 7, or an 8 or above. Okay. Cool. Excellent. Lovely jubbly. And also, while you in the live chat give me your race rating out of 10, this is not a sponsored stream, but it's kind of sponsored by me, okay? Because my last video, I want to just use this opportunity with you here live to give it a little promo, okay? Because I think it's pretty good. To New York City, but not just for a sightseeing trip, not just to see, well, the Empire State Building behind me up there. Brooklyn Bridge, I mean, it's all right, I suppose. Not the Flatiron Building because scaffolding. I'm not even here to see Casey's gaff. I'm here for something way more interesting. 5.2 kilometers long, 19 corners, undulation like you couldn't possibly imagine. I'm here to explore what could have been the Grand Prix of America Formula One track in the center of New York. It's actually in New Jersey. That's all you're getting. That's all you're getting for now. But that's my latest video. I went to New York. I walked around the Port Imperial Street circuit. I think it was a really good video. It's not got many views. I guess it's different to what I'm much more topical F1 at the moment. But if you haven't seen it, give it a watch, right? Because I think I did a pretty good job. I walked the whole track. But of course, I need to, if there's the appetite for that kind of video, great. If there's not, then fair enough. The good thing with this amazing job that I have is that, the feedback is immediate. If people don't like what I'm doing, then I can see it in the comments and I can see it in the view count. So there you go. But yeah, give that a watch if you haven't already. I think that was a really good one. Right. Cool. Race rating out of 10. 7% of you have given it a 5 or lower. 29% of you have given it a 6. 46% of you have given it a 7. And 18% of you have given it an 8 or above. Now, I get, out of all of these chinwags, the thing I get roasted for most is this arbitrary number that we give as a race rating. Honestly, it's like, doesn't matter what I say, if you don't agree with a number, Tommo bad. But this time out, for my own mental health, I'm actually quite happy that we've aligned very much, because I agree with the 29% of you. I've given it a 6 out of 10. A good race. It was a good race. Obviously, no fight for the win, which always helps because George was very, very clear. Obviously, Lewis making his moves through the field. There was some great wheel-to-wheel. How Liam Lawson and Kevin Magnussen did not crash in that opening lap. I mean, that was... We talk a lot about hard racing, okay? That is hard racing. Hard but fair. They gave each other enough space. And it was unbelievably good. Like, that's what I want to see from drivers. Wheel to wheel, corner after corner. It was so good. And there was some decent scraps throughout the field. There were some decent scraps. So that final turn at Vegas is kind of sketchy because they're doing about 195, 200 going through that final corner. But that's where you really see how impressive these cars are. There's not many corners that really capture just how, on camera anyway, just how unbelievably quick these cars are. I think in person, I remember when I went to Miami in 22, seeing the cars go through those S's, turns 3, 4, 5, I want to say. No, maybe a bit later than that. The quick S's, right? In qualifying trim as well. Damn, that was like... But Vegas, it did a good job of really capturing that sense of speed. Didn't have a fight for the win. No safety car shenanigans either, which was mad. No big accidents, people crashing into each other, which given what happened last year and how, we were so concerned at the start of the race how slippery it was going to be. And yeah, there was a lot of potential but they kept it clean. And I was very, very impressed with that. But no, it was a good race. Anything above a 5 out of 10 is a positive. And, we have been spoiled this year for sure. But yeah, for me, a 6 out of 10. And I'm quite satisfied, quite happy with that. Got a couple of super chats as well. I'm going to quickly go onto. BB, thank you very much. Very, very kind of you for the super chat. Thank you. Do you think this was the nail in the coffin for Checo? Bro, like, we're out of nails. There's no more room on the casket, however you pronounce it, for nails. It's just full of nails and there's no space. I like, come on. I'm frankly bored of talking about Checo not being good in a Red Bull, because I'm just repeating the same thing that we've been talking for the last, honestly, year and a half. And it's a square peg round hole. So, yeah, I've got nothing more to say on that. Checo is in that seat for commercial reasons, that obviously, and that is what's going to dictate whether Red Bull and Christian Horner and Helmut Marko keep him. You've also got the most compelling driver to go in it being Yuki Tsunoda, who, he's making it increasingly difficult, and he's making, like, Yuki's had, good moments, bad moments this year. Let's not pretend it's all been amazing, because it hasn't, but it's been more good than bad. And, like, it gets to a point, if Yuki has a really strong last couple of races as well, the optics of not putting him in that car look appalling on Red Bull. He will, of course, drive the Red Bull, Yuki Tsunoda, at the end of the year, won't he? In the Abu Dhabi test, I want to say. But we know Honda facilitated that. So that you've got to give him a chance at least. Come on. Look, Yuki's, I think he's grown. I think he's developed, right? And I think we as fans can be guilty of looking at a driver and, looking at a driver and considering their current aptitude using data and information from, 3-4 years ago. Yuki didn't help himself in Bahrain by acting like a bit of a petulant child, right, with Ricciardo. Outside of that, he's and I think that was a big kind of wake up call for him, because I think that incident may have actually ended up being the final nail in the coffin for him and his Red Bull opportunity, because I don't know, I feel like that was really bad, and I think he could really regret doing that. I know it's at the start of the year, but like, it's still in 2024. But I mean, performance-wise, he's absolutely there. The question is and always will be, will that performance carry over to a Red Bull car that Alex Albon could not drive, Pierre Gasly could not drive, and Checo Perez could not drive? We don't know. There's no doubt Yuki deserves it more than Liam, more than Daniel, but who's going to be quickest in that car? Who's going to do the best job as a number 2 to Max? I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's not about who deserves it from Red Bull's point of view. It's who's going to do the best job. I'd love that to be Yuki, because he does deserve it. And, I've got a lot of love for Yuki, but also as a Yuki fan, I don't want to see him go there and have the same struggles and not be able to give the best version of himself. And if Red Bull are not confident that he can jump in and drive that Red Bull, what that Red Bull needs from it, he can't adapt his style to the characteristics required from that car, then putting Yuki in that car isn't going to kind of achieve anything. It's tough. It is tough. It's very tough, but there's no doubt he deserves it. At least Perez managed to beat Max a few times, unlike Alex and Pierre. Well, I mean, look, I think Perez has had a lot more time than them two, especially obviously Pierre. I think the only time, correct me if I'm wrong, the only time Checo has actually, I think, outperformed Max was Baku 23. What was the one in Baku when Max just couldn't get past him? And then, it was 22. No, 23. I'm sure it was 23, wasn't it? I think it was 23. I can't remember. You know what one I'm talking about. There was one, where Checo was ahead and Max can get past him, Max can catch him. I think that's the only time that the only race where Checo's actually been quicker than Max. And I agree. I don't think there was a single race where Gasly was quicker than Max, and I don't think there was a single race where Alex was quicker than Max. And Checo's had one in 3 years. But then, Max is arguably the greatest of all time. Like you can make an argument that Max is the greatest of all time. You actually absolutely can. And so, is that a slight on Checo? Not really. Is that a slight on Alex and Pierre? Not really. But again, I think, what Red Bull needs, and what's made this championship so impressive from my point of view, on top of lots of reasons, is Max has done it one-handed. He hasn't had... He's been up against both McLarens, both Ferraris and both Mercedes occasionally. Checo's not been there, apart from ad hoc races throughout the year. Max has had to do it alone, and having a teammate there, it can hinder, of course, because then you get, and we had a bit of sauce between the Ferrari boys, didn't we, at Vegas, but I think it helps more than it hinders, right? Strategically. And just Checo's never there. Yet Max is still able to just do it. It just makes this feel even more impressive than it did anyway, But yeah, I think we'll see. I think we will see. Okay, that's what it ultimately comes down to. Daniel, am I going to race in 2025? No plans to. No plans to go any races in 2025, but I'd love to go to Austin. That's the one I really want to go to. Thank you, Gio, as well, for the super chat. Solid race, 7 out of 10. Fair enough. Thank you, Afka, as well, for gifting a couple of memberships. And thank you, Matthew, as well, for the super chat. If this season doesn't put respect on Max's name, then objectivity is truly dead. I don't like Hamilton being a Max fan, but I respect him a ton. We need to bring objectivity back and destroy toxicity. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Matthew. I think, there's this kind of attachment to binary black or white takes that, that gets lost, especially on platforms like, that's what Twitter's the worst for, right? You could easily do it. You could easily clip up a little sentence that I say in this Chinwag, stick it on Twitter and be like, Tommo hates Max, Tommo hates Lewis. And then everyone's like, yes, like, rather than actually just consuming this whole thing as a human being who there's nuance and there's different angles, you can look at things. That's what's interesting to me. That's what's always been interesting to me about sport and why I like talking about it and why I started doing these videos in the first place, because I feel like that's what's interesting, right, to me about sport. It's not just kind of... The only way you can really stick behind your opinions, in my opinion, is if you've truly, questioned and, truly tried to understand the other point of view. I think that's the only way you can really stand by what you say. Because so many times, I'll see... you'll see, a driver do something... good or bad, or say something about something, good or bad. And then their fan base will blindly defend them, not realizing that there will be a time where the shoe is on the other foot, and then you're going to look like a hypocrite because you've just backed that opinion, that perspective, whether it's, I don't know, Lando complaining about the changing tyres onto the red flag, or, Max pushing Lando wide in Mexico, or the Charles and Carlos stuff going on at the minute. You will always end up looking like a hypocrite if you're just blindly supporting the perspective of your driver. And look, I'm not here to tell people how to follow the sport. This is just how I like to follow the sport, how I find it interesting to talk about the sport, and I like to think I cultivate that kind of community in you lot, right? If some people would, Tommo's bias, and whatever, you will always get accused of bias, whether it's me, whether it's you. I'm just a fan at the end of the day. I've just got a big mouth and a big forehead, and I put it on the internet. You know what I mean? So it's I'm no different in that regard, and that's okay. and I think there will always be the toxicity and the fighting, but there will always be. I like to think I cultivate again a place where, we can just discuss things a bit more openly, and I can give my opinions on it as well. I learn a lot from you lot as well, right? That's part of the reason why I like doing these live, is because I can see the comments, that I can see the live chat, and when I'm talking about something, and you guys might give me a really good point of view that I hadn't even considered. That happens so often, and that just makes me feel more confident about my opinion that I end up leaning on eventually, because I've seen other perspectives on it live and can be like, hang on a second, yeah, I didn't think about it that way. Because there is, we're coming up to a hell of a Lomo moment shortly, or Lomoments, should I say? That's the actual correct way of putting it. But yes, I completely agree, Matthew. Sorry, I babbled on a bit there. This is going to be probably quite a long stream. I'll just warn you beforehand. Thank you, Tune. I want to say Tune. My annual Tommo subscription fee. Thank you very much, Tune. Appreciate it. Thank you for another year of content. Hope to run into you sometime in the Netherlands, as I live right by Zandvoort. Love that. Love that, by the seaside. Yeah, I'd love to. Zandvoort, definitely for European Grand Prix. Monza, obviously, I'd love to go to Monza, although I know it's a nightmare to get in and out, but still, the Monza vibes would be great. But yeah, Zandvoort's right up there. I love to. Yeah, me and Han genuinely thought about moving to the Netherlands prior to Brexit, and then Brexit happened. Maybe one day, just do like a couple of months in like an Airbnb or something, and just make loads of Dutch content. Just turn the Tommo channel into a Tommo NL instead of F1. That'd be fun. But thank you, Toon. Appreciate that. Thank you, Tommy, as well, for the Canadian. Recency bias being what it is in F1, does this one decent race from Checo and poor performances from Franco and Liam keep Perez at Red Bull Racing for 2025? Does this one decent race from Checo? Tommy, I feel like Checo finishing P10 in a Red Bull, like he got a point. But that's how low the bar is at the moment, that Checo getting a P10 and recovering from going out in Q1 and making up, 7 places, whatever he made up, is considered like a decent race. Look, there's nothing more to be said from me about Checo. Red Bull do what they would do, but obviously he should not be in that seat for meritocratic reasons, but there are many drivers you could level that argument against as well. Thank you, Shadow. George said he'd give Max a proper title fight in 25. Felt like a subtle jab at Lando. Does George have the mentality to fight Max over Lando given the car? Shadow, you know what? I said earlier, I think Shah is the guy who takes the title fight to Max. I think George is better equipped right now to fight Max Verstappen in a title fight than Lando Norris. I do. I think George has everything, and I see a lot of similarities in George to Charles, actually. Charles made a lot of mistakes, and I feel like this is the first year he's really ironed them out. George has still been making mistakes this year, but I think one on that pace-wise, racecraft-wise, he's ballsy as well. George is not afraid to get his elbows out. And I would say probably, look, Lewis is such an unknown because he's going to a new team. So it's hard to really feel like, right, I'm really confident that Lewis is going to be able to take it to Max when he's got to go to a brand new team. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a culture shock really for Lewis. He's been, Mercedes driver since he was 12, 13, whatever he was when they picked him up. So yeah, if I had to say the two drivers I'm most confident that can take it to Max if their teams give them the machinery are Charles Leclerc and George Russell. More so than Lando. I think I said that in my last stream as well, actually. I think George really does. Oscar's still got a bit of pace to find, but I think the foundations are there for Oscar. Lando has the pace, no doubt, but I just think he's got a lot of learning to do over the winter break, should I say? And I think he's just, there's Nico put it all on the line in 2016 to get it done. And I feel like Lando, there's definitely something missing. There's definitely something missing. And I feel like that's not missing in George. And thank you, Sai, as well. To be honest, Perez is a Mexican Fisichella with Sakir 2020 and Monaco 2022. Fisichella, man, what a name. Was he the last outside of Giovinazzi? Oh yeah, Fisichella and Trulli. Oh, do you remember that radio when Fisichella's engineer, when he was at Renault? It's that, you're going 2 seconds slower than Fernando. You got to speed up. Like, damn. Those team radios back in the day did not hold back, man. Right, anyway, we're 35 minutes in, and we've not even looked at the race result, have we, for the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix. So we should probably have a look at that now. George Russell, Lewis Hamilton lead home, and Mercedes 1-2. Crazy. Who would have thought it, eh? Who would have thought it? Now look, okay? I know some of you might may have watched the pre-race live stream, and I had a couple of a few of you went for Mercedes banger team, and you know what? I'm all for accountability, okay? Because you don't have to keep receipts when I keep them myself. So this is what I said about Mercedes, not just Mercedes actually, about Checo in the pre-race stream. To New York City, but not just for a sightseeing trip. Not that. That's the wrong thing. Now, I think Checo comfortable Q3 podium. 8% McLaren, 8% Haas, 7% Mercedes. 7% Mercedes. I had to double check that. 7% of you put Mercedes banger team. What? Why would 7% of you think Mercedes is going to do what? I don't. Look. Listen, we all get things wrong, okay? Again, the difference is that I record in 1080p and broadcast it live to the internet. So yeah, Checo, comfortable Q3, podium. Not quite. Mercedes. Who thinks Mercedes is going to... Listen, look, you win some, you lose some, okay? So I'd rather keep my own receipts than get flamed and, Tomo's trying to hide. No, I accept my L's, okay? Because it makes me human. Because I'm not Max Verstappen, okay? I'm not Max Verstappen, listen, okay? I mean, I think that's an overly common law moment, but there you go. Well done, Mercedes. You proved me wrong. You proved me very, very, very wrong. 1-2, George, Russell, Lewis Hamilton. Then 3-4, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc. Very contentious in the end. A lot of strong words used by Charles Leclerc. Post-race, he was not a happy boy. Max Verstappen P5. Couldn't hold the Ferraris off in the end, but finished ahead of Lando Norris, who, even though he got the fastest lap, wasn't enough. Max Verstappen wins the championship ahead of Lando, ahead of Oscar. Obviously, Oscar got his 5-second penalty for a false start. He was just outside of his grid spot. It's one of them you couldn't even really tell from the camera feed, but it's also one of them. It's like goal line technology. You're either in, you're out. He's out. So the 5-second penalty, you can say it was harsh, but it was deserved. It's one of them that there's no point arguing it. Nico Hülkenberg P8, good race from him. He's had a bit of a slump as of late. It wasn't good in Brazil. First half of the year I think was fantastic. It's been a bit trickier this second half, but this was a really good result from him. Yuki Tsunoda P9 as well. Obviously, great job in qualifying, splitting the McLarens, held on for a points finish. He wanted more, but Hülkenberg got past. He wanted to be best the rest, not quite in Vegas. And then Checo managed to get P10, the final points. Fernando Alonso P11. Tell you what, if Fernando had gone from out in Q1 to a point, which he was only, I reckon, a few laps off. Or should I say, it was a few laps too long, for Alonso to eventually let Perez get past. But I mean, that was a hell of a drive from Fernando in a difficult Aston Martin. Kevin Magnussen, the best of the one-stoppers. He did actually, considering, right, the one-stop was not the strategy in the end. A lot of people went for it, but he definitely was not the strategy. Considering all that, Magnussen P12 was actually a pretty good result. If he'd been on the right strategy, you've got to say, I think Magnussen points could well have been on. And then Zhou Guanyu. Wow. Q2, and a good race. He said it after quali. You know, this track does kind of play to the strengths of his driving style, and I'm glad. You know what? Like, I've talked about this before. Like, I feel like I do need to go through their 3 years as teammates, especially from middle of 22 and then all of 23. Because I feel like it was actually quite close between Joe and Bottas. And I don't know if that's just me misremembering completely what happened. But I feel like it was actually quite close between the two of them. Hence why I had belief in Joe going into this year. Obviously, it's not worked out for him. I don't think, obviously, the car situation has helped. However, Bottas has been way more able to deal with this really challenging car that's only gotten worse since 22 started, hasn't it? But I'm really glad, obviously, Joe's, probably going to be a Ferrari reserve next year. Used to be part of the Ferrari Driver Academy. And I'm glad we got one more good Joe performance out before we lose him completely. Because I don't think he's not completely incompetent. He's actually, I think, he's been a victim of circumstance, in my opinion, more than anything. But then so has Bottas. And Bottas is a 10-time race winner. Out-qualified Lewis Hamilton 30% of the time in their seasons as a teammate. So, Bottas is a good yardstick. But at the end of the day, Sauber have decided to switch it up completely. And I'm just glad that we got a good performance out of Joe. Okay, so well done, Joe. Franco Colapinto P14. See, got into Q2, out-qualified Alex, but then massive shunt, scary one, in qualifying. Driver error, completely driver error. Not good at all. That's the last thing Williams needed. So P14 for him in a car. Alex, before he retired, he was running in the points in a Williams car that maybe could have been points worthy in Las Vegas. Lance Stroll P15 didn't have radio all race, which I think does somewhat account for his struggles. In quali you did a decent. Well, you got within a couple of tenths of Fernando, and given he'd basically just had to go out straight away and do a run because obviously he had his car issues in practice. I think actually Stroll did an alright job in qualifying and then no radio in the race. So to finish ahead of Liam Lawson with no radio, pretty good. Liam Lawson P16, not a good race for him, which is, again, it just makes the Tsunoda argument that little bit more compelling when Yuki, finishes 7 places ahead of Liam. Esteban Ocon P17, had a drive-through penalty that was self-imposed. Basically, there was a mix-up between the Alpine pit wall and the Alpine mechanics. So Esteban came in to do his pit stop, and no one was there. So he just drove through and went round again. So you know what? Come on, that he lost. I think it's about 11 seconds. I want to say, maybe more than that actually. I did want more drive-through penalties. There you go, Panzer. You know what? Fair enough. Self-inflicted drive-through penalties. Well done, Esteban Ocon. Well done, Alpine. And then Valtteri Bottas, P18, was going for the one stop, then realised they couldn't make it work. He was trying to help out Joe at the end. A bit of just another stinker when it comes to... I mean, Joe was, I think, the better driver this weekend out of the two of them, which hasn't happened very often. And then, of course, Alex Albon retired with an engine issue, as did Pierre Gasly. And a shame because they were both running in the points relatively when those incidents happened. Tough for them. Big L for Alpine actually in that regard, and big L for Alex as well because he hasn't finished since a race since Azerbaijan. I want to say I'm sure that's what Ted said on the notebook. It's been a long time. So the driver standings after 22 of 24 race weekends, Max Verstappen 403 points. And he's not going to stop trying for wins either, is he? Let's be real. Norris 340. This is all wrapped up now, so there's not a huge amount to really glean from this. I mean, Russell, Hamilton, obviously good points for them. George is now, 32 behind Carlos. It really depends. I don't expect... famous last words. Mercedes were obviously rapid in Vegas, but in Qatar, when it's really, really hot, I don't know, it just feels like they're so up and down. I don't expect them to be great in Qatar, but we'll see. We will see. More interesting now that Max has got the driver's title wrapped up is the constructors. Now this is simply lovely, right? 24 points between McLaren and Ferrari with 2 races to go, including a sprint in Qatar, remember. And then Red Bull 29 points behind Ferrari, again without Perez doing his bit. That seems like a bit of an impossible task, to be honest. But then Haas Alpine Racing Bulls, Haas Jump Alpine, 50 points to 49 to 46 for Racing Bulls. So that's going to go down to the wire. And I think if Alpine, I think Alpine are best placed. I think they've got the most pace right now. But again, just like we're saying at the top, where, you know, 1 week McLaren the quickest car, then another track Red Bull are, then another track Ferrari are. You're going to have the same with Haas Alpine and Racing Bulls, right? Given each weekend, there's going to be swings in performance between those 3 teams. So I feel like Alpine are best placed. Just, you know, their Q3-ness. You know, 5 Q3s in a row. At least 1 Alpine car, you know, since their upgrade in Austin that really did add performance to their car. I would put them. My money would be going on Alpine. Again, Gasly's cooking at the minute. Obviously, his engine was cooking yesterday, as was Alex's. But I think I would go with Alpine, then Haas. I think Hulkenberg's going to do this. Again, Magnussen, if he'd done a 2-stop, maybe he could have been in the points as well. So tough. But yeah, Alpine are their own worst enemy, sure. That's fair to say. So those are the team standings. Lovely. Right, okay. Predictions. We did these on Wednesday, the pre-race stream. And mixed bag. Mainly L's. But not just from me, okay? Okay. Again, we accept them. We confront our failures head on TOMMO'S Race Chinwag, okay? Race winner Max, no. Banger drive Pierre Gasly. I'm going to give myself half a point. Obviously, we didn't get to see him finish the race. However, I put Clanger Lewis, which almost deserves minus points. I feel like I should have actually added a new, you know, instead of a cross over his face, something else. I think minus points is probably fair. Minus half a point. So you know what? 0 points for me. Banger team Red Bull, no. My expectations for Checo were somewhat. I don't know. I just like pain. Yeah, we get to these occasional Grand Prix. I'm like, no, Checo. This is the one where Checo switches it on. No. And then Clanger team Aston Martin. You know what? He wasn't great in qualifying, but the way Fernando was able to recover in the race, I can't put Aston Martin Clanger. Hamilton was Clanger in quali, sure, but the race has to, you know, have more weight. So, yeah, maybe a skull when it's minus points. So I'm going to give myself 0 out of 5 there. Because Lewis Clanger definitely deserves a minus. As for you, not much better. Race winner Charles, no. Banger drive Charles, no. Clanger drive Lando, no. I mean, you know, it wasn't great, but I mean, he still out-qualified Oscar, finished ahead of Oscar, was kind of in a bit of no man's land. The McLaren clearly didn't work that well at that track. So, definitely not a Clanger. Banger team Ferrari, I'll give you half a point for that. Because, you know, a 3-4 in the end. There was some questionable management of McLaren science and pitting, not pitting, but I'll give you half a point because they got a 3 and 4. They closed the gap to McLaren's pretty significantly with this result. So fair play for that. Clanger team Aston Martin, again, for the same reasons that I can't give myself a point, you can't give yourself a point either. Okay? So you win with half a point out of 5. And I lose with 0 out of 5. Oh, God. What do we know, eh? What do we know? Nothing. We're just fans, okay? That's all we are. We are going to talk about that, Dylan. Don't you worry. Yeah, we can all stink together. Exactly, Patrick. That's just the way I like to be. Yeah. Right, let's get into bangers and clangers then. My banger drive for the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix is George Russell. Did the job in qualifying. Did a fantastic job in qualifying. Led from the start. Held on to the lead into turn one, which, as Lando proves, isn't that easy. Held on, checked out. Obviously, Lewis made his way up and made really good progress in the race. Was closing that gap, but then it opened again. You know, Lewis was pushing to close the gap, and then the tyres started to grain up, and then he kind of started to lose pace to George towards the end. George was just managing that race. George, it was the perfect race. It was the perfect Grand Prix. Perfect. It was very good. Obviously, practice 1 and 2 for Lewis, but yeah, George made it count when it counted. Got that lap in qualifying. You think, you know, I do think if Lewis had qualified where he should have been, which is at least front row, if not second row, then I think Lewis gives George a hell of a run for his money. Because I do think typically over a race distance, Lewis is the stronger of the two. But again, that quali gap is there consistently, and Lewis made too many mistakes in qualifying. George didn't. George got it done. Lovely jubbly. Well done, George. Pretty slam dunk for me, that one. Pretty easy. 1,282 of you voted for Bangers and Clangers, so thank you for getting involved. And again, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you see the community posts where I post the polls, or follow me on Twitter at Tommo McCluskey as well. I'll post them on there. Get your votes in after each race and before each pre-race and after each race. You know what I mean? Your banger drive for the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix is Lewis Hamilton. 50% of the votes. 37% George Russell. And then 3% Yuki Tsunoda, 3% Zhou Guanyu. Glad Zhou's getting some prop. Love that. Yuki as well. Love that. Even though he clattered that pit lane speed limit board at the end of the pit straight, didn't he? Which was... I can't believe how much that threw the car. Like, I thought it was just polystyrene board, but the car it basically like chucked the car in the air. I know it doesn't add up, Benny boy. I know there's always someone who's going to get Jill you as well, getting in there. Oh, it doesn't add up. Yeah, look, Lewis obviously had a lot more than George to do in the race, making the overtakes he did. You know, the fact that George was, 10 seconds ahead of Max fairly early on. Yeah, Mercedes was clearly the quickest car. So, fair play Lewis making the progress he did. He had a very, very good race, excellent race. But, you know, he put himself on the back foot in qualifying. And that's why he didn't really have an opportunity to win this race. And that was firmly on him. So, I can't give it to Lewis, but I certainly understand why you can. He made a lot of progress. And fair play. Fair play to Lewis. He did a great job on Saturday. Yeah, it was Saturday, wasn't it? Like the Fred Vasseur quote. They were like, oh, at least your car is good on Sundays. So he's like, well, we're racing on a Saturday. Fred's just... I love Fred, man. Fred's different gravy. Fred is different gravy. Cool. Right. So my banger is George. Your banger drive is Lewis. My clanger drive, Franco Colapinto. Look, I think Alex showed that the Williams had pace. I think the fact that Franco got to Q2 showed that the Williams had pace. But that accident is such a rookie accident. He just drove into the wall, completely right off his car, had to start at the back. You know, Franco has made a hell of an impression in a very short period of time. And his outright pace, I think, undoubtedly is there. I think he's already proven that. He's got this ability to extract performance, and just like many drivers when they first come into the sport, the accidents are there. And this is not his first, far from it, in a very short period of time. And I think given the context as well of where Williams are, and the effort that's gone into bringing those two cars to Vegas, with the upgrades. You know, with fully spec'd up Williams, for him to just he's glanced the wall, but it's a huge outcome. And again, Williams had pace. Alex showed it in the race. You know, Alex was running P9 when he retired. Franco should have qualified ahead of Alex, did qualify ahead of Alex, but obviously started at the back because of, you know, it's pit lane start in the end. This was a missed opportunity for Franco to score big points, and instead it's just another massive accident bill for Williams. It's hard to kind of walk that line. You know, when Yuki came in his first year, he made a lot of mistakes, had a lot of crashes. You know, even Charles was very impressive in his Sauber first year. Yeah, he also had a few shunts. But yeah, I think I'm giving it Franco. I think, I don't know, does Franco's crash happiness, because we've seen, again, a lot of incidents in a very short period of time from Franco, does this make teams who have expressed interest somewhat concerned? You know what? I think a driver like Franco, it does depend on the team. And I think a team like Williams, can they afford a driver who's very quick but quite crash happy? I think Sainz does a great job and will do a great job for them. Very consistent, very reliable. And I think that's what a smaller team needs, right? I think the smaller the team, the smaller the budget, the more you need to index on reliability and consistency over absolute one-lap pace. And again, Franco's, I think he's proven already that he has that. But yeah, not good. Not good. And yeah, the sponsor interest, look, it's money. But these crashes are money as well. So I don't know if the sponsors are paying for all this accident damage, because and don't get me wrong, Alex has had his fair share of accidents. But yeah, so has Franco in a very short period of time. So yeah, my clanger drives Franco Colapinto. Your banger drive is Checo, 21% of the vote. Franco doesn't even make your top four. Yeah, obviously out in Q1, no excuse for that. Checo cut a very forlorn figure after qualifying, didn't he? And obviously recovered to where he did. But then you look at the recovery that Lewis was able to make. Yes, of course, the Mercedes was fairly comfortably the quickest car, but he was still able to go from P10 to P2 and pass both Ferraris, pass Max, pass both McLarens. Whereas Checo, starting P17, can't even finish ahead of Tsunoda and Hülkenberg. It's not good enough. Piastri, 15% of the vote, outqualified by Lando. 5-second penalty is harsh, but is what it is. Finished like 17, I want to say, seconds behind Lando, something like that, I think. Yeah, not a great race for Oscar. Not a great race for McLaren, but it was terrible, but it wasn't great. Lando Norris, 12%. Look, again, I think it seems like the McLaren boys couldn't have done too much more because they were just very on their own. Lando had a right pace at the end, but yeah, they were quite a way off Max, and they were quite a way ahead of Nico Hülkenberg in the end. Checo did a good overtake. He did do a good overtake. Actually, yeah, he did do a good overtake. That 3 wide with Lawson and Magnussen, I want to say. Was it them two again? And then when Checo sent it up the inside, that was an opportunistic move. It was a good move. And then 10% Valtteri Bottas. Again, last of the finishers. Joe finishing where he did. Yeah, I mean, I think Valtteri did somewhat sacrifice his own race to help Joe towards the end as well. But yeah, all in all, Sauber are not giving them too much to fight with, are they? So your clanger drive is Checo. Mine is Franco. Banger team. Very easy. It's Mercedes for me. It's Mercedes for you. 98% of the vote. 98 isn't 100%, Tomo. Look, no other team got any meaningful number of votes. So, is what it is, right? Banger team Mercedes, easy as you like. The question is now, can they... They've had many a false dawn. They clearly have a car that has a very, very... I think the operating window is narrow and unpredictable. And that's like, wow. So it's there. Like the peak performance is there. But it's just so difficult to actually find it consistently. And consistently enough to mount a title fight. You know, they need to make that car more drivable. Even if it means take it off. Because they're just not going to mount any degree of title fight. Yeah, they can't rely on just these odd upticks of performance. It's almost like taking, you know, one step back to take 2 steps forward or something. But yeah, it's frustrating, of course, for Mercedes and for George. It must be very frustrating for George. You know, at least he's getting these wins. He's won 2 this year, but it's like, if they gave him a consistent enough car to fight over the course of the season, I absolutely think, yeah, George could take it to Max. I do. Obviously, we'll see with Kimi Antonelli next year as well, but come on, Mercedes. Like, give us 4 cars good enough to win races next year from day 1, please. Because that's so good. That would be so good. It'll be an easy one, Mercedes. Lovely jubbly. And then a clanger team, for me, Alpine. Big opportunity missed. You know, Pierre puts it P3 in qualifying. He feels like he would have been in the fight for maybe best of the rest. Maybe P8 in the end. But then the car breaks down. And then obviously on Esteban's side of the garage, they pull him in for a pit stop and no one's ready. So given the upgrade, given where the performance is, Ocon should have finished further ahead than he did if he hadn't served the drive-through, in self-imposed drive-through penalty. And they fall behind Haas in the constructors. I just think it's a big missed opportunity for Alpine through their own doing, through their car breaking down, and through them bringing in Esteban for a pit stop and them not being ready. So I think that is plenty of grounds to give them clanger team, in my opinion. Even though, again, they've got pace, they've got performance, but they didn't realise that's part of what makes it a clang. You know, Minton wants to go outside, but we're not done yet, mate. So you're come in. There we go. Right. Anyone who didn't see Minton earlier is back again. And then finally, your clanger team, 33% McLaren. Which, look, I guess in the context of the Constructors' Championship fight and the context of them having no performance, I think that's a fair cop. No particular mistakes from like the drivers or the teams, the pit crew or anything. The car just seemed to be slow, you know. The car just seemed to be slow. 30% of you went Alpine as well, so just 3% behind McLaren. 17% Williams. Again, Alex breaking down. It's L, but then it feels harsh, right? Because the Williams pit crew have been on overtime. I hope they get a good Christmas bonus or a nice little treat from DeRilton because they deserve it. So I don't want to be too critical of Williams. And then 13% Aston Martin. That Alonso showed they had pace, but then if you can't get your radio to work, then you're not exactly helping out Lance's calls, are you? Cool. Okay, so those are your bangs and clangers. Those are mine. The only one we've agreed on, actually, is Mercedes, which I'm quite surprised by that, actually. Cool. Excellent. Lovely jubbly. Right. Team by team. Let's quickly go through all of the teams. Any things we've missed, starting with Alpine. Again, good pace. Just unreliability. Rearing its head again. It's always been a problem with their engine as well. I feel like it's disproportionately affected by unreliability compared to the rest of the grid. I could be wrong there, but I feel like it's not that uncommon to see a Viri engine go kaput mid-race. And yeah, not good. Shame for Pierre. But yeah, look, otherwise, I think the momentum is good. I still, like I said, I still believe they're my favourites for P6 in the Constructors because they do have a quick car underneath them. I want to say they were quick in Qatar last year. Am I right about that? 2023 Qatar Grand Prix. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Let me have a look. So qualify. Yeah, but both got to Q3. Gasly and Ocon both in Q3 in Qatar qualifying. And then in the sprint shootout, P10, P11, not so good. And the sprint race, P9 for Pierre. And then Esteban retired. And in the race, Ocon P7, Gasly P12. Yeah, okay, so they've got points. I reckon they'll be all right in Qatar. I think they'll do okay. But otherwise, I just think good momentum. I think Brazil was fortunate, but also Gasly put it P3 in dry conditions in Vegas. There is inherent pace in that car, undoubtedly. You don't see Alonso and Aston Martin doing that. So I think Alpine is probably, in my opinion, overall the 5th quickest car right now, which is an amazing turnaround from the start of the year. So up the end stone, love to see it. Aston Martin again, it's just painful. I hope the changes they're making are gonna actually bring something. Personnel changes, of course, with fellows out the door. Obviously, Enrico Cardile's coming in. Adrian Newey's coming in. And this 2025 year... Look, it's 26, isn't it? It's all 26 for Aston. And in the same way that James Vowles... I've retweeted it. It's so good. It's like... when James Vowles did the High Performance podcast, and he was just like, we just need to break everything. I'm like, well, your drivers are doing a good job of that, James. But Aston kind of need to go back to the drawing board. Understand why they've gone so wrong, because they've got all the resources in the world. But Haas right now seems to have a quicker car than them, who couldn't be more detached when it comes to facilities and budget and theoretical ceiling of performance, right? Oh no, Kane, he did. It's a good edit. Go on my Twitter and watch it. It's hilarious. And obviously Stroll is just frustrating to watch. Very, very occasionally he can do a good job, but more often than not, again, not helped by no radio, which is a massive, that's a massive hindrance in modern F1, not having a radio, blimey. So that didn't help his job in Vegas. But yeah, it's I feel for Fernando, I really do. It was almost like that window, that glimmer was there in 22, and then it just snuffed out. In 23. But yeah, it's not been good. It's a shame. It is a shame. I feel kind of just sad about it. But maybe Honda can work their magic on the PU side of things and help them out, because they need it. Ferrari, who may be giving a power unit to Cadillac from 26 onwards. That's a big story that I've not really talked about, that was evolving over the weekend, wasn't it? That Cadillac, operated by Andretti seemingly, but Cadillac branded first and foremost, could happen in 26, which would be incredible, right? 2 extra seats. Once that's confirmed, I'm definitely jumping on that, because that's really cool news. It's exciting to see. But yes, if Ferrari do supply them, then fair play, until they can have their own engine ready by 2028. That's word on the street somewhat. But yeah, Ferrari had a... I think they were the second quickest car, and they finished 3rd and 4th. So you got to say on paper they extracted the maximum. Now, the Sainz and Leclerc fans have been going at it online, because certainly Charles was not happy with Carlos in the end. I've watched the replays. I've looked at the onboards. I think that, look, for one thing, Carlos is racing for himself. He's been dropped. You certainly can't call Carlos being dropped by Ferrari a fair decision. I understand why it's happened, and the opportunity to sign Lewis is obviously a huge one. But Carlos has done a more than good enough job to deserve a Ferrari seat on merit, and is losing it. And so Carlos is driving for himself, and I can't begrudge him for that. Given the context, given the fact he's leaving, I can't begrudge Carlos for being selfish. And, I think he was. He was told to not put pressure on Charles, which is quite a subjective turn of phrase, and I'm sure his race engineer knew what he was saying. He could have just said hold position behind Charles. That's an order, but he didn't say that. And Carlos, went past Charles. They were being told to conserve because obviously Charles ran through his tyres, attacking George at the start, and then the gradient really messed him up, and he just fell off. He fell off a cliff, didn't he, pace wise? And then of course Carlos was asking, very much trying to race engineer his own race. I want to come in the pits. I want to come in the pits, and then obviously he comes in and then doesn't go in, cuts across the line, which that Carlos crossing the line was actually punished as a track limit violation and nothing more. Hence why he didn't get a penalty, which I was very surprised about. But again, we had a new race director this race, and so yeah, they just decided that actually no, that's just a track limit violation. Okay, cool. And yeah, Carlos finished ahead of Charles Leclerc. Obviously, if that had been penalised with a penalty, Charles would have got on the podium, which would have been kind of funny. But yeah, no, and then obviously Charles had a big outburst on the radio after. And Willow, you say it yourself, he lifted to keep Max in his DRS as well, which I've not seen that myself, Willow. Obviously, when Carlos did pass Max, there was quite a few laps where Max was able to stay within Carlos's DRS, and therefore he was not at risk of an overtake by Charles. Obviously, eventually Charles did get past Max, and many have speculated that Carlos did that on purpose to try and keep Charles at bay, keep him behind Max for longer, and obviously Carlos ends up with the podium. Willow, you're saying there's some tweets of throttle data. I've not seen those tweets, so I don't have an opinion as to whether Carlos did that on purpose. I don't. You know what? Like, I think the best thing Carlos can do for if he can help Ferrari win this constructors, which obviously is going to be easier if Charles finishes ahead of Max because more points. That's going to be a hell of a IOU from Ferrari to Carlos almost, right? Because I think he's been an incredible servant to that team, especially knowing this whole season that he's not got a seat next year. So if he can help get that across the line, but then also for his own personal, Carlos, in his position going to Williams, there's no guarantee he ever stands on a Formula 1 podium again after this season. So again, can I begrudge? That's a very real possibility, by the way, right? I mean, Nico Hülkenberg has never sat on a podium in Formula 1. Carlos is going to Williams. Who knows what happens, right? Maybe another top seat never opens up. Maybe Ollie Behrman does an unbelievable job in Haas, and he's the one who gets the Ferrari seat alongside Charles Leclerc long term, and then there's no route back for Carlos there. Maybe Kimi Antonelli and George Russell were long-term stalwarts at Mercedes. There's so many unknowns, and if Carlos was purposefully doing what he can to maximise his chance for a podium, even playing games to keep Charles behind, I can't, with that context, I can't really blame him. He's not playing the team game. If he did do that, he's not playing the team game. But I kind of get why. So, look, I don't know if that's true or not. I'll let you be the judge, right? You can find the data. I've not seen it myself. But either way, I mean, all in all, it's a good weekend for Ferrari. You got to say. Still putting themselves in a good chance of catching McLaren. I don't think they'll do it. I think it's asking a bit too much. But I would honestly really like to see. I don't know. It'd be cool to see McLaren win it, but actually, I think given this is Carlos's final season at Ferrari, I think the vibes for a Ferrari Constructors' Championship win slightly outshine the vibes of a McLaren one, because this is Carlos's final hurrah, So yeah, there you go. Shenanigans at Ferrari. Haas, again, Magnussen was on the wrong strategy, did a one stop, but great job from Nico Hülkenberg. He pitted on lap 14 and then the lap 33, so he had a pretty standard two-stop, whereas Magnussen went on the mediums till lap 17. And it wasn't the right strategy for him. But well done, Nico Hülkenberg. Again, it's been a bit of a wobble as of late, but it's good to see him back firing all cylinders. Obviously, they moved back to P6, which is huge for Haas, right? Because that, for a team like Haas, with the infrastructure limitations that they have, for them, I think more so than any other team in that bottom 5 teams, finishing as high as possible in the constructors is the most valuable to them. You know, Alpine have Renault back in. Sauber have Audi back in. Williams have the Rilton back in. Racing Bulls have Red Bull back in, right? Haas are still just a little bit of a plucky independent. And so that money, that extra prize money for finishing higher is really going to make a bigger difference. Because most teams are operating at the budget cap anyway, with the sponsors, MoneyGram pay a lot of money to be on that car, Chipotle, all the rest. But yeah, I think that would be huge for Haas if they can get P6. That'd be mad. And Nico Hülkenberg deserves a lot of credit for it. But fair play to Magnussen as well. I think, again, with a better strategy, I think we see Magnussen higher up. And I'm looking forward to see what K-Mag does next. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next. I'd love K-Mag. K-Mag and IndyCar just feels like the perfect marriage. K-Mag and IndyCar, honestly. I'd love to see that. I would love to see that. McLaren, again, just slow, really. Obviously, Lando, I think, was pretty gracious after the race about Max. And even Max has talked about this, right? He's seen his own fans and Lando fans, going at it when actually these guys, they've got a lot of respect for each other. I think they both appreciate that things are said in the heat of the moment because they're both competitors, And I think they give each other more benefit of the doubt than so much of the fan base gives online, right? And I think Lando, he's spoken. I think Brazil was a really tough weekend for him to kind of mentally deal with that, and I can completely understand why. Because just to have things flip as much as they did would have been difficult to accept, right? And if anyone can put themselves in Lando's shoes in that moment, you'd say the same. But yeah, look, I think Lando, you learn most from the failures, the defeats, the struggles in life, and as long as Lando and McLaren learn what they can from this year, then they're going to be even better prepared to take the fight to Max and to Ferrari and to maybe Mercedes next year. So, yeah, I mean, not much to say about McLaren this race. Just didn't work for them. These kind of extreme conditions. Wasn't it? They were saying the coldest Grand Prix ever was like the 1978 Canadian one, I think, or something. And it was 5 degrees. And wasn't it like 6 degrees on the Thursday or the Friday? Like this was a bit of an outlier in terms of conditions. And maybe Qatar will be an outlier in the other direction. Do you want to go out, mate? That seems to be the most likely. Maybe it'll be too hot. Maybe it'll be too hot for McLaren in Qatar. And actually it'll be perfect for Mercedes again because they only operate when it's freezing cold or boiling hot. Maybe. But yeah, McLaren, not much to say really. Bit of a mid performance from both drivers that's kind of hard to really analyse because they just seemed quite clearly to be the kind of fourth quickest. Certainly, obviously, behind Red Bull and Max, certainly behind the Ferraris and obviously behind the Mercedes. So yeah, it just didn't work out for them this weekend. Mercedes, look, again, proved me wrong and fair play. But it's so hard to predict Mercedes. Like, as much as, only 7% of you want for bang a team for them in the pre-race prediction. So less than 10% of you actually did believe enough in Mercedes to vote for them. All right? Hang on a second. Look, they're there, but they're not. And it's like, hasn't that been the case since the Grand Effect era started? They won a race in 2022. Brazil. You know, with that car that they had with the zero pod, they found that those conditions aligned with this really narrow, really unpredictable operating window. And we've seen it again this year. A few more occasions, obviously Lewis winning in Silverstone and the Spa victory as well. It's getting a bit more frequent, but it's still way too unreliable. The correlation, yeah, actually, exactly. The correlation just is not there, and they don't seem to understand it. So how the hell are we as fans meant to understand? The drivers don't get it. Lewis and George don't understand why, and how, and it's. But they do have the potential to be the quickest car. Red Bull has the potential to be the quickest car. Ferrari has the potential to be the quickest car. McLaren has the potential. Right now, we do have 4 cars that, depending on the conditions and the track, are the quickest car, which is pretty cool. But yeah, great job from Mercedes. Fair play, well done to them. Nothing to fight for in the constructors, of course. Too little, too late. But again, learning. They've been learning for a long time, Mercedes, in this ground effect era. They've been learning for the entire thing. 2025 is when that learning actually executes into a consistent season. And also, you know, maybe Lewis leaving as well, you know, it allows Mercedes to really, we're going to really consolidate around what George needs, prioritise George. Kimi Antonelli, you know, he will develop, he will improve, he will make mistakes. That is a certainty, really. You come back in, mate. And yeah, we'll see. Time will tell. Time will tell. But I reckon that maybe could help them. And again, I think George absolutely has the minerals to fight Max Verstappen if Mercedes give him the car. Absolutely. I reckon George versus Max. We've seen it I remember Barcelona 22 when they had a little scrap and I was like, ooh, I like this. Vegas last year wasn't so good. George just drove into Max because he didn't see him because he wasn't looking. But yeah, the ingredients are there. Racing balls. Yuki-san, my friend. Great performance. Great job. He's good enough for a top midfield seat at least, is Yuki Tsunoda. I would have loved to have seen Yuki alongside Pierre at Alpine. That's what I would have... Like, I'm glad Jack Doohan's getting the opportunity, but I think Yuki and Pierre at Alpine would have been... And it would have been a great place for Yuki to be. I worry that opportunity isn't going to open up. I think Yuki Fernando at Aston Martin is obviously an eventuality that Honda should and will be pushing for, and will be trying to exert their influence to happen from 26 onwards, because he's far too good to not be in the sport. He's come in super crash happy in his first year, not particularly quick relative to Pierre, although I had a great Abu Dhabi 2021, which is always understandably forgotten. His dive bomb on Valtteri Bottas was filth. So good at Abu Dhabi 21. And I think he's grown, he's improved. He's taken too long, I think, to mature. And we saw again in Bahrain start of the year. But I think the raw pace has always been there. I think it's taken a while to develop, but fair play to Red Bull. They have given him that time to improve. You know, obviously the Honda connection has helped. I don't know what the future holds for Yuki Tsunoda. I don't. But the more he puts performances in like this, the more he helps consolidate his stock, his position, his position in the minds of teams, right? And you've got a lot of rookies coming into the sport next year. You've got Gabriel Bortoleto, you've got Jack Doohan, you've got Kimi Antonelli, you've got Ollie Behrman. You can't really count Liam Lawson, can you? Maybe an opportunity opens up, maybe a door opens up for Yuki somewhere else. You say Burko, Yuki's tied to the Honda seat. It's just interesting how much, would Honda... I don't think they'd get in the way of him going somewhere else. In the same way that, Bortoleto was a McLaren driver, McLaren Junior, and McLaren have let him go to Sauber because they didn't want to, as much as they'd like to keep him, if they do want him back, if McLaren can keep being really good, then Bortoleto would always want to go back. I think Yuki's obviously connection with Honda is strong, and they've supported him for his entire, even junior formulas. That was a big sponsor on his car. And I think Jason, I think you're right. I think they would, let him go if the opportunity presented itself. I think Alpine was that opportunity, to be honest. And the more he can just carry on doing a really good job and, like he said, destroying his teammates. He was very bolshy with his language, which I like. I like it. But he backs himself, and fair play, right? So I know, his ego's getting ahead of him. Nah, I respect him backing himself, Tommy, if Cadillac uses a Honda PU, Yuki could go there. Well, it seems like Ferrari are the most likely, but Honda has also been spoken about as a potential, in part, obviously, Aston Martin are literally right next to Andretti's kind of new Silverstone base. But Cadillac will use GMPU from 2028 onwards. They won't be using it from 26, which is when they're planning on getting in. So, yeah, I think, all Yuki can do is just keep performing, keep letting his performances do the talking, and just make it impossible for no one to pick him up. Because I think Yuki goes racing well. I think he's got fantastic racecraft. I think he's got a good lap in him. I think he's got a mistake in him, but who hasn't, right? Cadillac hasn't been announced officially, no. But I mean, all of the amount of talk from the amount of different sources as well, both within F1 and more like journalistic sources outside of F1, it seems like we're just waiting on an official announcement for Cadillac. Like it is almost guaranteed to happen. And that's when I'll do a video covering it, which would be fun. And maybe reflect on, because I've done a what if Cadillac join F1 video before, but it would be fun to kind of reflect on that and be like, now it's actually happening. Who could be the people involved, It'd be cool. Maybe that's the project that Otmar Safnauer was talking about, the American-backed project that is not Andretti. Now, of course, Andretti is still very, very connected to this Cadillac thing, but maybe that was just Otmar's way of being like, well, technically, I'm actually talking with GM and Cadillac, not Andretti. Maybe. But yes, anyway, Yuki, great job, Liam. Difficult weekend for him. He just not great in qualifying, only just squeezed through into Q2 and then was at the back. Obviously, Yuki got into Q3, P7 in the end. So Yuki just a stronger driver this weekend, I think, straight up. Simple, really. And not what Liam needs if he wants that Red Bull seat. Not at all. And talking of Red Bull seat, obviously, I kind of got nothing more to say about Checo that I haven't already said 1,000 times over. Just a hell of a turnaround from Red Bull. And when you consider the personnel leaving, all of the internal politics with Jos and Helmut and Christian as well, and the way that the team's just been able to plough through, fix the car, get it back into a good place, and give Max the hardware to wrap up his fourth world title has to, credit where credit is due. Absolutely, right. They've done a hell of a job this year, Red Bull. Where the goings got tough, they've responded, and they've been able to give Max the tools to do it on his own. Red Bull will always have to bear a degree of responsibility, a significant degree of responsibility for producing a car that, Gasly and Albon and Perez are not mugs. They're proven good quality F1 drivers. Max is the best, but Red Bull have not, it's not just that Max is beating Perez and Albon and Gasly. It's that everyone else is beating Perez and Albon and Gasly in that Red Bull. And for that Red Bull, I think much of that is on them. If they've not been able to make it work in 3 and a bit years with Checo. Obviously, Checo, again, it takes from both sides, right? Checo's obviously struggling with confidence, but I just wonder going into 25, there is no guaranteed driver that can jump into that car alongside Max and perform. There just isn't. There isn't. Perform enough anyway to at least back Max up, at least do a Bottas job. It's we'll see. We'll see in 25. It's going to be a tall order for Max when he's not getting that support from his teammate. And do I think Checo would give him that support? No, we've seen that. Do I think Daniel or Liam or Yuki would give him that support? I mean, hard to say. I can't say with confidence any of them would support Max's championship ambitions in the way that would be ideal, right? I think all of them would have a significant deficit. A, because Max is so adept to this car and really, he's spent his whole career outside of his first season at Red Bull Racing, but also, it's clearly a hell of a task to jump into this Red Bull and be quick. And look, the Constructors has fallen by the wayside, absolutely. P2 is maybe on, but even that's a stretch. Bit more ATR, bit more wind tunnel time. It's not all bad. And Red Bull GmbH have plenty of money. They're they're hitting the budget cap comfortably with Bybit and Oracle and all these big brands on the car. The ATR bump is going to be welcomed for finishing P3 in the Constructors. So there's that. And we'll see. But underestimate Red Bull and Max Verstappen at your own peril. That's all I'll say. Thank you, Si, by the way, for the super chat. Lewis Hamilton is finishing in every single top 10 position at some point this season now. There's a stat for you. Thank you very much, Si. Appreciate that. Sauber, look, finally they gave Joe something that he can work with this weekend. So credit to him. Obviously still not enough for points, and points would have always been a stretch, really. I mean, they need multiple DNFs, and both Red Bulls finished, both McLarens finished, both Ferraris finished, both Mercedes finished. So with that being true, it was always going to be a long shot for Zhou Guanyu to get in the points. But fair play to him. Did a good job. Stopped on lap 11 and lap 34. So pretty standard 2-stop following the precedent set by most of the rest. And shame for Joe, he'd gotten points in any other of the 9 cars for this weekend's performance. Maybe, yeah, it kind of worked for him. It did kind of work for him, didn't he, this weekend? Joe's second pit was bad. Was it, Ollie? To be fair, I didn't see. How bad was Joe's second pit stop? Do I think that a bad pit stop would have got him ahead of, he'd have had to finish ahead of Perez to get a point? It's a stretch. But yeah, fair play, Joe. Fair play, Valtteri doing what he's got to do. Did you see Valtteri in Ted's notebook? When he was saying about the jumpers, he was like, it's raising for money for people who suddenly found themselves out of work. It's very like The Office style. It's quite funny. Joe had a 3.9 and a 5.8. Ooh, yeah, that's not great. They forgot a tyre. Wow. Savage. Yeah, so Sauber didn't help him. Would it have been enough to get him in the points? No. But, of course, they didn't, do their part either. I just hope next year that they have a different sponsor. That's what I hope. I don't mind the bright green, but just give me a different sponsor, please. And then Williams, again, I think Franco has to take clanger for me. Just that huge accident, completely self-inflicted in qualifying and damaged what could have been. Williams were quick here. It's a missed opportunity, definitely. They're they need a freak result to finish ahead of P9, so there's nothing really to fight for them. It's just about getting it across the line now, getting to the end of the season, because they are quite comfortably behind. Where are they in relative to team standings? They are 29 points behind Racing Bulls, which is 2 races and a sprint. That's asking way too much. But yeah, break everything, James. That's what you said. You said break everything. That's what they're doing. I think Alex was driving well. You know, he had a bad qualifying. You know, really bad qualifying from Alex. Wasn't able to get the car prepped for the lap correctly and qualified like 7/10 behind Franco, which was bad job in quali, but it was making good progress in the race. The car had pace. It's always had straight line pace. It's always done well in these low downforce specific tracks, but wasn't to be. Car broke down and Franco wasn't really able to make a massive amount of progress in the race either. So yes, it was. I feel like you can't give a rookie clanger for a rookie error. Really, Melissa? Yeah, but he just drove into the wall. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like that is a hell of a rookie error, just driving into the wall, you know? But yeah, not good for Williams. Next year, it's just getting it. Look, again, P9 is more ATR, so that's something that they can put towards their 2026 car. The Derulton money is still pouring in. They're still supporting this team, and they've got Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon next year. And hopefully Carlos can help push them forward. Carlos is, fantastic when it comes to the engineering. He's got the brain for it, hasn't he? I think Williams, tough weekend for them. Tough couple of weekends for them. To be honest, again, Alex hasn't finished racing since Azerbaijan. Right, okay, excellent, lovely jubbly. We are done. Thank you all for watching, wherever you are in the world. Appreciate you all being here. Doze, Champ, Fishy, Epsilon, Melissa, Pascal, Lotus, Champ, Niall, Avriel, and the rest of you. I will be on Patreon with this overlay in like 10 minutes. So if you want to support what I do on Patreon, that would be much appreciated. We'll do a little live stream, just kind of chat about anything. Also, new merchandise is on the horizon. Go give at TOMMO'S Racing Goods a follow on Instagram. New merch is on the horizon, and we will be talking more about that over on Patreon. Also, when I do drop the merch, which is in the next couple of weeks, it will be on Patreon first. There will also be a bit of discount for all Patreon supporters on the merchandise. So you heard it here first. Got a little edit put together as well. I just want to. It's very loud, so I need to find a way of how do I. Oh, there we go. Me in New York. Oh look, little bit of a t-shirt there going on. What's going on there? What's going on there? 4th of December. Interesting. Right. Thank you all again. Jill, Patrick, Melissa, Crispy, Champ, Dylan, Seamus, and the rest of you. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da. Bye-bye.